and welcome. Tonight, Senate refers Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to its Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions for disciplinary review following a dispute over seating arrangements in the chamber. Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan institutes a 100 billion defamation suit against the Senate President Godswill Akpabio before the Federal High Court's territory in Abuja. And the federal government tells the global community that Nigeria is ready for more investment in the oil and gas sector. UK Prime Minister Starmer says a dangerous new era is behind his decision to boost defense spending and cut the aid budget.
On business news tonight, Nigeria's GDP grows by 3.84% in the fourth quarter of 2024.
On sports, Mikel Arteta says the Gunners will give up the English Premier League title fight over his dead body as they travel to Nottingham Forest for Wednesday's clash.
And from the nation's capital, court clears Naira Marley and Sam Larry of involvement in death of singer Oladimeji Ilerioluwa, popularly called Mohbad.
Let's begin tonight with matters from the Red Chambers. On February the 20th, 2025, during plenary, there was drama in the House due to an altercation between the senator representing Kogi Central, Mrs. Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, and the Senate President Godswill Akpabio, following a refusal by the former seat to be relocated. Well, the latest development from that controversy is that the Senate has now referred Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to its Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions for disciplinary review. The committee, chaired by Senator Nedai Maswe, has been given 2 weeks to investigate the matter and submit its findings. Well, this decision was reached after a voice vote on Tuesday as lawmakers revisited the dispute over the seating arrangements in the chamber, upholding parliamentary decorum and adherence to established rules. Raising a motion under Senate Orders 1B and 10, Senate spokesperson Yemi Adaramodu condemned what he described as Mrs. Akpoti-Uduaghan's extreme intransigence during plenary session. According to him, the issue has dominated media discussions, forcing him to work on repairing the public perception of the 10th Senate.
The President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, leads lawmakers into the chamber for the first plenary of the week. Upon resumption, it is evident that tensions from the verbal altercation during the last plenary session had not fully settled as the Senate spokesperson in a matter of privilege reignited the matter.
This extreme intransigence and obduracy drew a lot of public comments. Our Bible and our Quran, which we all subscribe to religiously, embodies and epitomizes the whole Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Any action against it is an action against the Senate. And where there is sin, there must be penalty.
The Senate is an institution, and that institution needs to have at its dashboard integrity.
More aggrieved senators, including the principal officers, are quick to make an impute.
It's nothing that has to do with gender. It's nothing that has to do with hatred. It's nothing that has to do with any form of malice. We have a committee that is in charge. Whatever alleged, refusal to obey our rules or display of lack of strength of character, but the committee also has a responsibility to ensure that the privileges of the affected senator are also protected.
By consensus, the lawmakers agreed to probe the erring lawmaker as they passed a vote of confidence in the leadership of the President of the Senate.
Those in support that the disorderly conduct of our colleague, distinguished Senator Natasha Uduaghan, be referred to the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions, headed by distinguished Senator Nedai Maswe, to look into it and advise the Senate revert to us within 2 weeks.
Meanwhile, the Senate has adjourned plenary until Wednesday, March 5, to allow lawmakers focus on the ongoing public hearing by the National Assembly on the 4 tax reform bills, which has entered its second day.
To register.
More More stakeholders turn up to make their presentations on the tax reform bills on the second and final day of the public hearing on the 4 bills, with stakeholders and participants continuing their submissions and recommendations.
We can build a tax system that is transparent, fair, and conducive to sustainable growth and delivers shared prosperity. The best time for action was yesterday. The next best time is now.
The submissions made here will be thoroughly reviewed and considered as we refine these bills to ensure they serve the best interest of all Nigerians.
A total of 51 agencies and stakeholders participated out of 251 invited for the 2-day public hearing by the Senate.
But Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan did not take long to react to that matter. She has gone to the courts to file a lawsuit against the Senate President Godswill Akpabio to the tune of 100 billion naira for allegedly defaming her. In the suit filed before the Federal Capital Territory High Court, the President of the Senate and the senior legislative aide to the Senate President, Mfon Patrick, were listed as second to third defendants. In the suit, Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan, through her lawyer, Victor Giwa, alleged that the words of the Senate President and published by his aide on his Facebook page with the title, "Is Local Content Committee of the Senate Natasha's Birthright?" where he stated that the claimant thought that being a lawmaker is all about makeup and wearing transparent outfits to the chambers. Mr. Giwa says that the statement on Mrs. Akpoti-Uduaghan was defamatory, provocative, disparaging, and lowered her dignity in the eyes of her colleagues and right-thinking members of the public. Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan has urged the court to restrain the defendants or associates from publishing defamatory words against her or any platform. She has also asked the court to order the defendants to pay her the sum of 100 billion naira as damages and 300 million naira as litigation cost. The senator representing Kogi Central had voiced a concern after the seat was reassigned due to a reshuffle. In the meantime, the ad hoc committee of the Senate on Ways and Means is accusing the Central Bank of Nigeria of frustrating the investigation into the 30 trillion naira Ways and Means advance and the anchor borrower scheme under the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari. At a meeting with consultants and CBN representatives, members of the ad hoc committee expressed their frustration over the failure of the Apex Bank to provide crucial documents required for the probe. The committee, which was inaugurated a year ago by Senate President Godswill Akpabio, stated that the delay has significantly stalled progress on investigation. The chairman of that committee, Senator Issa Jibrin, criticized the CBN for withholding vital information despite multiple requests revealing major infractions with the preliminary reports of the CBN.
Senate President entrusted us with this assignment and tasked us that we should come up with our report within the shortest possible time. We held several meetings with the relevant parties. We've been compelled to make available this interim report to the Nigerian public, so that they know that they let them know where the problem is. And the problem is that the Central Bank of Nigeria has denied us consistently the documents that we need to complete this assignment. That is the truth. I was at the CBN sometimes ago, which order I wasn't supposed to do. I met the CBN governor. I met Bala, the deputy governor, and they promised that nothing came out of it. So let the Nigerian public know that this job has been stalled, this assignment has been stalled by the Central Bank of Nigeria. They've denied us the relevant documents to proceed with this job. Nigerians will judge you. But having said that, we are legislators, we will not back out. You've heard my colleagues. You must avail us or avail the consultants all the documents that they require to complete this assignment. The Nigerian public may be thinking that we have gone to sleep, and that is not the case. This is a major assignment that borders everybody. We want to know how these monies were utilized. Okay? We want to know how these monies were utilized. Preliminary reports shows that there are major infractions, especially on the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Away from the Senate now, the imperatives of having a truly independent electoral body as well as regular electoral reforms is the core of the conversation, as former President Goodluck Jonathan and former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Tahiru Jega, have made presentations at an ongoing conference to reflect on democratic elections in West Africa. The conference, which is organized by Yaga Africa and their development partners, draws election observers from the region to reflect on lessons learned from some of the recently conducted elections in Africa.
Former President Goodluck Jonathan and the former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, are among the dignitaries attending this conference to reflect on democratic elections in West Africa.
From the lenses of the elections that have held,
issues around election administration, technology deployment, fake news, and disinformation are the crux of the discussions here.
We have structured the discussions around 6 themes that cut across election administration, the role of technology, disinformation, electoral justice, and more importantly, we also want to be forward-looking and looking at what these implications or what these elections mean for governance.
Former President Goodluck Jonathan is the guest of honor, and he underscores the importance of reforms that guarantees a truly independent electoral body.
The electoral commissions must be really fully independent. And we must have credible people that, from what like Jigai is saying, if political leaders who are so domineering over pressurize you, you must do what is wrong. You should be able to resign and leave. I feel that our electoral processes are too regionalized. The interests of regions, and where the interests of regions overwhelm the national interests, the electoral processes will always be modern.
The keynote speaker, Professor Atahiru Jega, highlights challenges facing democracy in West Africa.
To be able to get elections right, you need an election management body that can do its work professionally, impartially, efficiently in order to deliver election results with integrity. There is political interference in the appointment and or removal of electoral commissioners and other election officials.
The former INEC chairman also outlines steps to be taken to protect democracy.
Citizens, credible civil society organizations, and democratically inclined political actors, what I call drivers of change, should continue to mobilize effectively for credible and sustainable electoral democratic processes in our country or in our sub-region. There has been noticeable progress in the establishment and strengthening of relatively independent election management bodies. They face a lot of challenges, but they need to be strengthened and enabled to be professional in their work and to ensure that they conduct elections with integrity.
For 2 days, members attending this conference are expected to reflect on the conduct of some of the recent elections in the region and draw lessons that will shape preparations for the 2027 general elections in Nigeria.
In part 2, after the break, the United Nations pledges its support to the cleanup efforts in Ogoniland. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, broadcasting live from Lagos. A reminder of our main stories. Senate refers Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to its Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions for disciplinary review following a dispute over seating arrangements in the chamber. Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan institutes a 100 billion defamation suit against the Senate President Godswill Akpabio before the Federal Capital Territory High Court, Abuja. And the federal government tells the global community that Nigeria is ready for more investments in the oil and gas sector. And UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the dangerous new era is behind his decision to boost defense spending and cut the aid budget. To politics now. The National Caucus meeting of the All Progressives Congress, the APC, is presently ongoing at the State House Conference Center, with President Bola Tinubu and other members of the caucus in attendance. The meeting commenced at 7:20 p.m. today with the arrival of the president. In attendance are the Vice President Kashim Shettima, the leadership of the National Assembly, led by President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, and the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Tajuddin Abbas, and the APC National Chairman, Abdullahi Ganduje, members of the National Working Committee and other party organs, including the serving and former governors, are also in attendance. The caucus meeting, which is the first since this administration was sworn in, will be followed by the party's National Executive Council, scheduled to hold tomorrow. I will definitely be bringing you updates on latest developments as we get them. To the energy sector now. The conversation on energy transition as it concerns fossil fuel exploration and production has once again triggered various opinions regarding its application. While at the Nigeria International Energy Summit holding in Abuja, participants, including the OPEC Secretary General, the two Ministers of State for Petroleum and Oil and Gas, the GCEO of NNPCL, are all discussing ways of connecting the global investing community with the potential of Africa's oil and gas resource. Our correspondent Olu Phillips reports.
We're also joined by
the Nigerian International Energy Summit, a federal government-backed convocation, opens officially in this power-packed room of both national and international captains of industry, chief executives, ministers, highest-ranking government heads in oil and gas endeavor, the OPEC Secretary General, the APO Secretary General, investors, producers, the list just goes on. The lever driving the discourse is how to bridge continents by connecting investors globally with Africa's energy potentials.
Unlocking the full potential of this continent's great potential is a priority for OPEC. And that's why I'm here. My team are here, and we will continue to work closely with the Nigerian government and our other African members to unlock this potential. We anticipate at OPEC a very bright future for Africa's oil industry, with substantial opportunities for growth, with an abundance of natural reserves. The continent is home to 5 of the top 30 oil-producing countries, and its proven oil reserves amount to around 120 billion barrels.
Nigeria puts up this strong footing, establishing its size in resource, opportunities, and its resume in the industry so far.
The government is also attracting investment in LNG, CNG, and gas to chemicals. By fostering a business-friendly environment, Nigeria is building a sustainable gas ecosystem.
All of you seated here, if you want to invest in any country, the global norm is that you go to any country you want to invest at will and also have the privilege to divest at will. But where that is not the case, that will be a major fundamental disincentive to investment. And under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigeria has shown readiness for business. And that is why 4 major divestments that were pending before had been completed.
The jury is out. Fossil fuel will remain significant in the global energy mix. Africa, and indeed Nigeria, is poised to develop its resource in strong pushbacks to ambitious narratives suggesting otherwise.
The transition conversation has brought something else on the table. That gas is the transition fuel. For us, it's not just transition fuel, it's the alternative that we have. It's a better alternative, not just a transition fuel. We know today in our country, over 70% of our countrymen don't have access to clean cooking fuel. This is true. And of course, access to electricity is about 50% of our population. So there is so much space there that gas can fill.
Reforms, free entry, free exit, favorable executive orders, infrastructural development within and across the region are some of the cards Nigeria has put on the board as bargaining chip to woo global investors.
The enactment and implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act, the PIA, has also strengthened the regulatory framework of our energy sector. We have witnessed increased crude oil production owing to strategic interventions in security, infrastructure development, and investment incentives.
The president who was represented here says that you can do investment in Nigeria, you can bring your money into the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, and you have a free exit. What's more, into the transition story, Nigeria is also introducing a hydrogen development agenda, which will also help scale up very massively the investment drive Nigeria is putting forward at this international conference. From Abuja, where the Nigeria International Energy Summit is holding, Olu Phillips, Channels Television News.
Vice President Kashim Shettima has described SecureID Group as a homegrown Nigerian success story and a continental leader in the smart card manufacturing and digital solutions sector. The Vice President made these remarks during his tour of SecureID factory in Lagos as part of the company's 20th anniversary. The founder and chief executive officer of SecureID Group, Kofo Akinkugbe, says the vice president's visit is a source of encouragement for the management and staff of the company to continue to be committed to building a brand not just for Nigeria, but for the world.
It's a special day for SecureID Group, a leading manufacturer of smart cards and digital solutions, as the company marks 20 years of its existence. In a landmark visit, Vice President Kashim Shettima arrives at the SecureID plant in Lagos, accompanied by the Deputy Governor of the state, Kadri Hamzat, to see the operations of the company, which has been at the forefront of Nigeria's push for self-reliance in the technology and manufacturing space. The Vice President goes straight to get prepared for the factory tour, as is welcomed into the factory by the management staff of the company and other dignitaries. The Vice President gets to see the cutting-edge production processes with the state-of-the-art equipment deployed by SecureID for the manufacturing of smart cards, international passport, and other high-security documents for clients in 21 countries across Africa.
This is a local business with international flavor, with the capacity to do 200 million cards in a year. And they are performing at only 40% of their capacity. I know how the president is very passionate about patronizing Nigerian companies, and be rest assured that our passports, our voters' cards, will be produced in this factory.
After the tour, the Vice President goes on to further applaud SecureID Group, saying the company is a testament to what is possible when vision is matched with dedication and hard work.
I want to congratulate SecureID for translating ambition into reality and setting a benchmark for others to follow. It is my firm belief that the various ongoing interventions of this administration will pave the way for the emergence of more companies like SecureID, companies that will transform our economy, create opportunities, and raise the living standards of millions of Nigerians.
The founder of SecureID Group, Mrs. Kofo Akinkugbe, expresses gratitude for the VP's visit, reaffirming the company's commitment to expanding its operations, creating jobs, and putting Africa on the global stage.
We're completely overwhelmed and I would say extremely encouraged that this administration can sort of recognize indigenous companies like ourselves, making waves against all odds. And that just encourages us to keep going, no matter what the limitations are, but to keep going. And I think what it does as well is to continue to be committed in building a global brand that is not just for Nigeria, but for the world.
SecureID is the first smart card manufacturing company in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa. The management of the company says it will not relent in delivering world-class products and services.
The United Nations is set to provide technical assistance to the hydrocarbon pollution remediation project HYPREP in its ongoing efforts to restore the environment in Ogoniland. The UN's resident and humanitarian coordinator in Nigeria, Mohammed Fall, made this commitment at the high-level diplomatic visit to HYPREP's management on Monday at their head office in Port Harcourt, the River State capital. Our correspondent Deborah Agbalama reports.
A high-powered delegation led by the UN resident and humanitarian coordinator in Nigeria, including representatives from the World Health Organization and civil society groups, are at the HYPREP headquarters. Received by HYPREP project coordinator, Professor Nenebarini Izabe, the UN officials state the purpose of their visit.
You have UN not only as the voice of the RC,
but you have UN and its different entities. And each and every one of these entities could provide an asset, could provide backstopping, could provide technical assistance in these different areas that I mentioned, which are livelihood, restoration, access to water, access to health, creating a conducive environment for children to grow.
Other members of the delegation echo their commitment to continuous support.
I want to review our commitments and tell that FAO will stand ready to support this implementation of the program, bringing on board our expertise that we already developed on the other area of the countries. When talking about mangrove rehabilitation and restorations, talking about alternative livelihood, talking about how to create jobs and employment in there.
HYPREP's project coordinator briefed the delegation on progress, highlighting the establishment of a multi-stakeholder remediation document committee tasked with finalizing the remediation action plan.
For us, we feel that we should create 2 levels of scrutiny or screening of the proposed remedial action plan. So we set up a multi-stakeholder committee that we call the Remediation Document Review Committee. It has representatives of civil societies, HYPREP, SVDC, UNEP, when UNEP was still here, but then we have the post-UNEP consultants, which is actually the same set of consultants that UNEP engaged to support us.
Professor Zabe emphasized that over 130 remediation and restoration projects are ongoing, but sustained support is crucial to fully restore Ogoniland's environment and livelihoods. While the UN Environment Programme withdrew its full involvement last year, this renewed commitment from the UN and other international bodies offers HYPREP hope for a revitalized cleanup effort. Deborah Abalama, Channels Television News.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Nigeria's GDP grows by 3.84% in the fourth quarter of 2024. And that's in business news. Please stay with us. Welcome back. We have more for you on the news at 10 as we head over to Abuja studios now where Millicent Walker is standing by. Over to you, Millicent.
Thank you, Anne. And now to court matters. The magistrate court sitting in Sabo Yaba area of Lagos State has freed Abdulaziz Fashola, popularly known as Naira Marley, and music promoter Samson Balogun Eletu, also known as Sam Larry, in relation to the case of the demise of Aloba Oladimeji Ilerioluwa, also known as Mohbad. Magistrate Ejiro Kubenje, who read and implemented the legal advice of the Directorate of Public Prosecutions, DPP Lagos, said they have no case to answer. The court also freed Owodunni Ibrahim, also known as Prime Boy, and Mohbad's former manager, Okwere Babatunde. The DPP, however, says it shall be prosecuting the auxiliary nurse who treated Mohbad, Feyisayo Ogedengbe, and one of Mohbad's friends, Ayobami Sadiq, for the offence of reckless and negligent acts contrary to Section 251E of the Criminal Laws of Lagos State 2015. The two will be prosecuted at the Magistrate Court.
The late Nigerian singer Mohbad died in controversial circumstances on September 12, 2023 at the age of 27. He was swiftly buried the next day in what many considered to be a hasty move. Videos soon surfaced online of assaults and harassment he suffered at the hands of his record label, Malian Records, owned by Naira Marley, and Mohbad's fans soon began a social media campaign for an autopsy to determine the cause of death. On September 2022, Mohbad's body was exhumed, and a week later, on September 29, a coroner's inquest began sitting also to unravel the cause of death. In October of the same year, music artist Naira Marley, promoter Sam Larry, and Prime Boy were invited by the coroner to say what they knew about the death of the then 27-year-old artist. In May 2024, A forensic pathologist from the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital, LASUT, Professor Sunday Shoyemi, told the coroner that the result of an autopsy conducted on the deceased failed to ascertain the cause of death. Following the inconclusiveness of the government's autopsy, Mohbad's family rejected the results and pushed for an independent autopsy. The coroner granted their request, and the result of that autopsy is still being awaited. At the magistrate court sitting in Sabo Yaba Tuesday morning, those fingered in the death of Mohbad joined a few family members, fans and lawyers involved in the case to listen to the conclusion of the Lagos State government's forensic investigation into the case. In the 6-page legal advice put together by the Director of Public Prosecution, Dr. Jide Martins, on behalf of the Attorney General of Lagos, the DPP noted that his office can no longer wait indefinitely for the coroner's reports, and that Mohbad's family was also at liberty to present its own forensic report during the trial of those indicted by the DPP. Magistrate Ejiro Kubenje, who read and implemented the legal advice, freed Naira Marley, Sam Larry, Pram Boy, and Mohbad's former manager, Babatunde Opere. The court held that according to the legal advice, they had no case to answer with regards to the death of Mohbad. The DPP's advice also noted that though documented accounts of unlawful assault on Mohbad were actually carried out by Naira Marley and Sam Larry, sometimes acting on the instigation of Opere, these accusations do not make them criminally responsible for the death of Mohbad. Investigations showed that it was in the process of punching Prime Boy that Mohbad hit the glass of a vehicle, cut himself and sustained an injury in the right arm which bled, became swollen, and was eventually improperly treated by an auxiliary nurse who lacked medical training, and which eventually resulted in Mohbad's death. The DPP says for this reason, it shall be prosecuting the auxiliary nurse Feishayo Gidingbe and one of Mohbad's friends, Ayobami Sadiq, also known as Spending, who procured the nurse, knowing full well that she was not a trained medical practitioner. They will both face charges of reckless and negligent acts, contrary to the criminal laws of Lagos State. The duo will be prosecuted at the magistrate courts, and the case has been adjourned to March 24th for mention. Shola Shoyeli, Channels Television News.
Away from the courts, the federal government and the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, have initiated discussions aimed at coordinating regional and global initiatives to safeguard submarine cables and other critical digital infrastructure. The Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, made this known during a press conference in Abuja. ITU is a specialized agency of the United Nations responsible for matters related to information and communication technology. Mr. Tijani expressed his satisfaction with the meeting he had with the Deputy Secretary General of the ITU as they both welcomed a two-day summit on submarine cable resilience.
We've come to the realization that over the last years, we've made significant strides and progress in connecting our people, but the conversation needs to move away from just connection, but meaningful connectivity, which means you do have access to a connectivity, the kind of connectivity that can allow you be part of the global digital economy. At a minimum, if you're in the urban area, you should be able to get minimum 25 Mbps in download. What to say when we move the conversation to subsea cables is the fact that as a country, I think we have about 8 or 9 submarine cables now landing in Nigeria, so capacity is not our challenge. The biggest challenge for us is extending those cables into the country, ensuring that it can reach every of our citizens. Which is why if you follow the activities of the ministry and this government, the government is now investing $2 billion in 90,000 kilometers of submarine cable network across the country, ensuring that wherever our citizens find themselves, that they have access to meaningful connectivity. And that's the awareness for us that when we make this investment, we're not just making the investment for the fun of it. We know that investing such an amount of money into an extensive network in a country where the average age is about 16.9 will take more of our people online. And as we do that, we also have to then protect them as well.
And that's it from the nation's capital. It's now back to Anne for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you, Millicent. And let's bring you more updates on the caucus meeting. The federal government, the chairman of the Progressive Governors Forum, Hope Uzodinma, has waved off allegations of lack of internal democracy in the party, saying the party is united, stronger and democratic. He was speaking after the national caucus meeting of the All Progressives Congress, the APC, which took place at the State House Conference Center this evening with President Bola Tinubu and other members of the caucus in attendance.
Of course, you know that the government of Bola Tinubu started 2023, May 29th, and they had a lot of things to settle. The party has been so busy, a lot of things has been done. Other organs of the party has been very effective and efficient, and all has been going well. And today, we had our caucus meeting preparatory for tomorrow's National Executive Committee meeting. And it went very well. Our party is united, stronger, focused, supportive of the government. APC is a very large political party. We have different organs of the party. At the grassroots, at the polling unit, we have an executive. At the ward level, we have an executive. At the local government, zonal, state, and the national. And everything has always been done democratically. Just for instance, any moment from now, we are getting ready to go into the selection of our candidate for the by-election in Anambra State. Forms are being sold. Aspirants have started buying the forms. At the end of the day, we will follow our process. Because our own political party, we have our internal mechanism for doing selection, for exhibiting and demonstrating democracy. So I don't think that there is anybody alleging anything that does not suggest that we are democratic enough. After all, why are we winning all these elections we are winning? Is it not because we have demonstrated high capacity and recognition and respect for democracy and its processes that the party is every day gradually, incrementally becoming popular and more popular?
From politics to business, let's check out Nigeria's economy and how it grew in the last quarter of 2024. Dominic Iwewu is standing by.
Thank you. And on business news, Nigeria's economy grew by 3.84% the last quarter of 2024, up from 3.46% in Q3 2024 and Q4 2023. That's according to the National Bureau of Statistics. This data follows the rebasing of the country's GDP by the National Bureau of Statistics. According to the NBS report, the services sector led the expansion, contributing 57.38% to GDP. The oil sector's real growth fell to 1.48% from 12.11% a year earlier, contributing 4.60% to GDP. Meanwhile, the non-oil sector grew by 3.96%, driven by financial services, telecoms, agriculture, and manufacturing, contributing 95.40% to GDP. Last week, the NBS reported that Nigeria's inflation rate had dropped from 34.8% in December 2024 to 24.48% in January 2025. Nigeria's February 2025 bond auction recorded a sharp rise in investors' demand, with total subscriptions reaching 1.63 trillion naira, up from 670.94 billion naira in January. This led to higher allotments, but at lower yields, signaling strong confidence in the debt market. The Debt Management Office had reopened the 19.3% FGN April 2029. That's the 5-year bond, and the 18.50% FGN February 2031, which is the 7-year bond. Unlike January's auction, no 10-year bond was offered. Although the initial offer was 350 billion naira, the high demand pushed total allotments to 910.3 billion naira, far exceeding expectations. Bitcoin has dropped below $91,000, losing 4.5% in the past 24 hours, its lowest level since November. The decline follows reports of President Trump's tariffs on Mexico and Canada, which triggered a sell-off in crypto markets. This marks the second time Trump's tariffs have caused turbulence in the crypto space. The total cryptocurrency market capitalization shrank by 8%, falling from $3.31 trillion to $3.09 trillion. Other major cryptocurrencies also declined. Ethereum fell 8.5% below $2,500, while XRP dropped 9% to $2.25, reflecting a broader market downturn. To some company news, Unity Bank PLC has reported 59.3 billion naira in gross earnings for 2023 financial year, reflecting a 3.84% year-on-year growth. The audited financials submitted to the NGX show strong performance across key indicators. Customer deposits surged by 23%, reaching 402.9 billion naira, up from 327.4 billion naira. At the same time, interest income rose by 9.6% to 53.7 billion naira from 48.8 billion naira. It was another negative day at the domestic equities markets as investors continued to bleed stocks. Willie Bong gives us the highlights.
That's right, Dominic. The equities market ended in the red again. Hello and welcome to the stock market report. Let's see how the market performed today. The all-share index is in the red by almost a similar margin that we saw yesterday, 0.32%. We are at the 107,000 level, hoping we'll see a turnaround tomorrow. But let's see the stocks that drove the performance today. We see banking in the red, 0.56% there on the screen. And, you know, except for FBN Holdings, the others were in the red. Consumer goods, we see Nascon and Honeywell Flour, you know, pulling that counter down. And oil and gas, the Aradel, Oendo, and Japol Gold driving negative sentiments for that stock. We're expecting earnings for Aradel, but let's see how that would impact investor sentiments. Let's zoom in now on the figures and see how they performed. Except for FBN Holdings, which is the outlier today, we see the others. UBA down 0.54%, GT Core in the red 0.79%, Access Core 0.58%, and Zenith Bank 0.83%. Now, 2 consecutive days of negative closes at the NGX. We're hoping tomorrow we'll see a turnaround, and that's the stock market report. Will Ibong signing out.
And that's it on business news. Back to Anne for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you, Dominic. Outside our shores, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says that a dangerous new era is behind his decision to boost defence spending and cuts the aid budget. Earlier today, Mr. Starmer announced that Parliament, the UK, will increase defence spending to 2.5% of the GDP by the year 2027, coming from 2.3% it was in the current GDP. Well, he says this announcement was not reactionary and it's been coming for some time, that he agrees with US President Donald Trump that Europe, including the United Kingdom, must do more to defend itself. Here's Simon Puser with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5.
The United States has twice sided with Russia in votes at the United Nations to mark the 3rd anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, highlighting the Trump administration's change in stance of the war. First, the US opposed a European-drafted resolution condemning Moscow's actions and supporting Ukraine's territorial integrity, voting the same way as Russia and countries including North Korea and Belarus at the UN General Assembly in New York. Then the US drafted and voted for a resolution at the UN Security Council which called for an end to the conflict, but contained no criticism of Russia.
A simple, historic statement from the General Assembly that looks forward, not backwards. A resolution focused on one simple idea: ending the war.
This is, we speak about frozen assets. We already used them to back precisely the loans negotiated at the G7.
Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron has said a truce between Ukraine and Russia would be agreed in the coming weeks. He was speaking in Washington following talks with Donald Trump at the White House on the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion. The US president, who suggested the war could end within weeks, insisted Europe should shoulder the cost and burden of any peacekeeping deal for Ukraine. Macron said any peace deal in Ukraine must not be a surrender of Ukraine and must be backed by security guarantees. Authorities in the southern Indian state of Telangana are racing against time to save 8 construction workers trapped inside a tunnel for more than 72 hours. Around 50 workers had been working inside the 43-kilometre-long tunnel located in Nagar Kurnool district when a part of its roof caved in early on Saturday morning. Officials say 43 of them managed to come out safely, but efforts to reach the remaining 8 men have faced repeated setbacks due to loose soil, mud and slush inside the tunnel. The freezing of US humanitarian assistance has forced the closure of almost 80% of the emergency food kitchens set up to help people left destitute by Sudan's civil war. Aid volunteers said the impact of President Donald Trump's executive order halting contributions from the US government's development organization for 90 days meant that more than 1,100 communal kitchens had to shut. It is estimated that nearly 2 million people struggling to survive have been affected. The conflict between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces has killed tens of thousands of people, forced millions from their homes, and left many facing famine since it erupted in April 2023. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer says the UK will increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. Defence spending is currently equal to 2.3% of GDP. Mr Starmer says by 2027 the increase will mean an extra £13.4 billion a year on defence. While defence spending increases, Keir Starmer says aid spending will fall from 0.5% of national income to 0.3%.
I know that this House will endorse the principle of winning peace through strength. So starting today, I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War.
Singapore's biggest bank, DBS, says it expects to cut around 4,000 roles over the next 3 years as artificial intelligence takes on more work currently done by humans. The move will affect temporary and contract staff, with the reduction in the workforce coming from natural attrition as projects are completed. Permanent staff are not affected by the cuts. The bank's outgoing chief executive also said it expected to create around 1,000 new AI-related jobs. It makes DBS one of the first major banks to offer details on how AI will affect its operations. And an aeronautical company in the US has released footage showing a concept version of its flying car performing a vertical takeoff before flying over an SUV. The CEO of Aleph Aeronautics said that he had thousands of pre-orders and hoped to start production within 12 months. For around $300,000, the company says buyers will get an electric flying car with a predicted airborne range of 110 kilometers. But taking a friend for a spin may prove tricky. The cockpit only has enough room for 1.5 people.
And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel's studios in Lagos.
Many thanks indeed, Simon, and welcome to Sports News. President of the World Boxing, Mr. Boris van der Vos, has pledged his commitments to the growth and development of boxing in Nigeria and Africa at large. Mr. Boris, who is in Nigeria on a 2-day visit, met with officials of the Nigerian Boxing Federation in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, earlier today, and he says he desires to build a sustainable future for the sports.
And I think it's really important to stress that it's not about Olympic medals, but it's really about creating a sustainable future for our sport. And for that, I'm also here to discuss how we can develop boxing, not only in Nigeria, but also in Africa. And I think Nigeria can have also a more leading position in this for organizing an international training camp, courses for RNGs and coaches, but also having international competitions. And for me, it's really important that of course, you can support with funding, but most of all, there need to be a real good proposal from the federation.
Away from boxing, the NWFL Premiership heads into mid-season on Wednesday with title holders Edo Queens playing host to Ekiti Queens in March the 7th clash at the Samuel Ogoniland Stadium. League leaders Remo Stars ladies will host Nasarawa Amazons in Ikenne, while in Lagos, Dana's ladies will welcome Abia Angels. In Group B, Rivers Angels will be at home to Adamawa Queens. FC Robo Queens will face Group B leaders Bayelsa Queens at the Mobolaji Johnson Arena in Oniko. Delta Queens will also be in action this Wednesday against Ibom Angels. To the EPL now, where Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta says the Gunners will not stop fighting for the English Premier League title despite slipping 11 points behind leaders Liverpool ahead of their visit to Nottingham Forest this Wednesday. The manager says the Gunners would only give up the title fight over his dead body.
That tells you the resilience, the resources, the ambition that the team has, every individual has, and that has been probably in my time one of the proudest moments to work in that sense. The thing is that when you are there, you want more, and you want more, and you want more. And I'm not going to stop over my dead body. We stop thinking that way and putting everything that we possibly can to increase that probability of us winning and being better than the opponent and hitting that performance and those standards constantly, regardless of what happens.
Well, let's bring you up to speed with updates from the just concluded games in the English Premier League. You have them on your screen. Brighton strengthened their bid for European qualification by beating rivals Bournemouth 2-1, with Danny Welbeck scoring the winner in that game. Crystal Palace defeated Aston Villa 3-1, while Fulham scored at the start of both halves to earn a 2-1 win over Wolves at the Molineux and get their push for Europe back on track. And that's Sports. I'm Kelly. I get you guys back to Anne for the rest of the news at 10.
Thank you, Kelly. And the main news again. Senate has referred Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan to its Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions for disciplinary review following a dispute over seating arrangements in the chamber. We also told you that Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan has instituted a 100 billion naira defamation suit against the Senate President Godswill Akpabio before the Federal Capital Territory High Court. Well, that's the news at 10 tonight. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawadu. Good night and stay safe.